Hello everyone, welcome to another Narc Survivor live video. In this one we're going to be talking about a different topic, but something that I have spoken about a few times in the past. And I've noticed that it does get a lot of views because of course in this day and age, a lot of people are going through gangstalking. It's happening all over the world in workplaces, schools, communities, everywhere. Sorry if I just slipped up on my words. There's a lot of talking that always goes on outside my room. So then sometimes I get distracted from what I'm saying. But yeah, this video is going to be about exposing gangstalking and the truth they don't want you to know. I myself have been a target of gangstalking since 2016. So for me, it's been going on now for almost 9 years. And this is every day. It first started for me when I was 22 years old, which is about nearly 14 years ago. But back then it wasn't every day, but there's still a Twitter page from when I was being gangstalked back then, and it's still online that you can see now. If you type in Kunty Kumaran on Google, Kunty space Kumaran. If you go to that Twitter page, you'll see it's a parody page about me. To this day, it still has over 100 followers, almost 14 years later. And they were following me around, taking pictures of me with my girlfriend at the time, who was very pretty. A lot of people were jealous of me. They also put up a picture of me with my father's car as well. And it kind of reveals, they were envious of me being with this beautiful girl. And also because of my father's car and just the lifestyle that we had back then. So it kind of reveals that that's what the problem was. And sorry, getting distracted again from all of the voices behind me. And all of the door slamming. This goes on all day, every day. As you may know if you watch my past live videos as well. But yeah, that's kind of what it was about, is because I was dating a very pretty girl who came from quite a wealthy family. And also, there's the picture on the Twitter page as well of me with my father's car. And yeah, it was going on quite a lot back then as well. But it's been since 2016, the last 8 years, that it's been really bad. And, it's been going on every day since then. So, yeah, it began in 2016 for me. And I was really stuck for a couple of years. I couldn't really do anything with my life. I was just stuck at home and in the apartment for 2 years. People would harass me every day, but other than that, I was just on my own. I was isolated. And then somehow, well, through hard work, I managed to build my business online, my YouTube, to where I now have nearly 200,000 subscribers. And I managed to make quite a bit of money out of that. But then I was gangstalked in other countries as well. So even though I traveled outside of the UK, I was then gangstalked in Thailand, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, Taiwan, Japan, and even here now in the Philippines. So I've been gangstalked in many different countries. I am a very high profile, targeted individual. And it's amazing, just looking back at the Twitter page, which is still online. Kunty Kumaran, if you type it in on Google, you will see it. It's amazing how it all just started off from, just posting pictures online of me with my father's car. And also I was being stalked, harassed, and they were taking pictures of me with my girlfriend at the time. It's crazy how it started off just from something like that, I mean. But that's how it is for me. And Yeah, that's just how it was. It was all just about, they were perceiving it as like a self-image. And I remember back then, like things would happen, like a Premier League footballer. He was only 22. He moved in next door on our streets of 6 homes of multi-million-pound homes. So a Premier League footballer moved in next door. And then my father just came into the lounge in the home, and he brought the footballer in, and I heard him say, he said, "Come see how big he is," as though he's like trying to put me down to him. And I think he wanted me to hear that as well. And there were just other things like my father he has another family as well, and his children would constantly make fun of me and say, "Oh, you're so big time," and everything. And this was just me growing as an individual, just finding my confidence. I was going to the gym, exercising, just taking good care of myself. And they began to see me as a threat after that, because up until that point, I was always the scapegoat. I was someone who they just like looked down on and blamed for everything. And then I started growing, I started becoming better. And then it became a problem for them. And I always knew I was meant to be something and that I would do something big. And, I have done something big. Nearly 200,000 subscribers, 50 million views. I mean, that is big. Of course, we did this together. We grew this channel together. But yeah, I became very successful from this, and I earned a lot of money, and it ended up with me being targeted on a very grand scale. Many different countries around the world, and you can see all of the evidence of it in my videos. I've posted so many videos, and in every video you will see so many things that just stand out and don't look right. Like all the time I get the covert harassment, I get the cars just driving past, doesn't matter where I am, doesn't matter what country. The modified cars, modified bikes, the horns beeping 24 hours a day, door slamming, people talking outside the door, power cuts. I get followed around wherever I go, people are harassing me. It's so many things, so many incidents. I mean, at this point, we're talking like potentially millions of incidents over the past 8 years that I've gone through. So it's impossible to mention everything that's happened. There's so many different things. And I've been affected in so many different ways. I mean, at this point, well, at my peak, I was at a peak as well before being targeted, when it first began. Back when I was 22 years old, this was in 2011. But, since then, I was intensely targeted daily, 24 hours a day in 2016. That was when I was about maybe 26, 27. And since then, then in 2018, 2019, I worked very hard on my business, growing this YouTube channel. In 2021, I reached my peak of earning about close to $20,000 a month. And, because I was gang stalked in, abroad, I was gang stalked in Thailand as well. So they still managed to sabotage that too. And I got involved with someone who also joined the gang stalkers, and I had a daughter who was also taken off me. So now they got me in all kinds of crap, with like getting me in debt and making it so that it's kind of like my success, my hard work has put me at a disadvantage. And that's how it is with gang stalking, is that the harder you work, the more successful you become. They can use that against you. They can sabotage all of it and cause you to get in debt. Now, most of you who are being gang stalked, you may not ever see that. You may not ever reach the point where you do become successful while being gang stalked. Somehow I did. I became a self-made millionaire by the age of 32, 33 years old. Which, now is all gone because they sabotaged all of that. Again, if any of you do have dreams, fantasies of becoming rich while being gang stalked, becoming successful, that's just the beginning of it. Because then they can sabotage your success and cause you to be in a lot of debt. So you do have to be very careful with these types of people. They are very dangerous. Now we've got radios outside as well. But yeah. So let's get into it. Let's talk about, what is going on. What is up with these gang stalkers? Who are they? Why do they do what they do? Let's give you the truth that they don't want you to know. Give the video a thumbs up. Let's get this video out there. I'm sure there's many people out there who will want to see this because, while they like to make you think that it's just you, like you're the only one in the entire world that this is happening to, and I believed that as well for several years. I thought it was just me. I thought everyone else has a perfect life and there's no problems for anyone else. It's just me who has all these problems. And of course, I began making these videos. I now realize this is happening to so many people. Millions of people around the world are being targeted. Maybe not as intensely as I am. Maybe not to that extreme, although some may be as well. Some may be worse. And yeah, actually, I have seen worse than what I've been through. More aggressive gang stalkers. There was one in Australia that I saw on YouTube. But that was only one incident that I saw. For me, this is every day. But yeah, okay, let's get into the truth that they don't want you to know. What are their motivations? Because, there has to be a motive. What causes someone to behave in that way? And it has to come down to some kind of personal vendetta or conflict. So they must have some kind of vendetta against you. Remember, narcissistic people, they're hypersensitive to criticism. Anything could set them off. So it could be something that you've said or done and you don't even know about it. You don't even know what it is, because when you're dealing with a covert narcissist, they're not going to tell you. They're never going to give you closure, and that's really what can help you to identify these types of people, is that they don't ever tell you what is wrong. And this is because in their childhood, they were never allowed to have feelings. They were never allowed to express how they feel. And they could never resolve conflict openly. So they had to do it covertly. And this is how it's now evolved with them doing this gang stalking, this covert harassment. Because the organism does what works and what is effective for them. Whatever they've learned to be effective, and their people clearly learned that being overt, expressing how you feel, being open and honest about things is not going to get them the result that they want. They've clearly come to that conclusion, and this is why they're covert. And this covert harassment is meant to settle a grudge or to exert control. And this can happen in the workplace. It could be a dispute with a neighbor. And I do remember there were some shows that, some TV series that I've watched before. One was Neighbors from Hell. And I'm not sure if that TV series is still available online, but definitely check it out if it is. It was filmed in the UK, and most of them were very covert. They did things under the radar. They wouldn't just talk openly to each other. It was very indirect. But sometimes it would escalate. and then there would be a direct confrontation. Again, the TV series that I've seen, such as Neighbours from Hell, typically it does appear to be more covert in those TV series as well. So yeah, you may experience this with neighbours, it could be in the workplace, it could be just in the community as a whole. I've had clients that I've spoken to who have experienced full-blown community harassment with everyone in their town or city. I've spoke to a number of people who have experienced that. And I asked them, how many people are we talking about here that are harassing you? And one of them said potentially hundreds of people. And another person said there's potentially thousands, tens of thousands of people who are harassing them. And of course, luckily, they booked a session with me because I've got the experience with this. I mean, for me, being let's just talk for the last 8 years. Daily harassment over the last 8 years. I mean, that's, how many days is that? Let's say 1 year is 400 days. 10 years is 4,000 days. It's got to be close to like 3,500 days of gang stalking so far. 24 hours a day. And on average, I must be coming across about potentially a good, at least 100 gang stalkers on an average day. Even more if I'm out in a city, but let's just say 100. And that's 3,500 days of gang stalking. So that would mean at the very minimum 35,000 gang stalkers that I've come across so far. But then also consider I've been out in cities as well, very busy cities. I've been to capital cities around the world: Kuala Lumpur, Taipei, Ho Chi Minh, Hanoi, and here in the Philippines, Makati, Manila, very busy cities, where sometimes I could be coming across thousands of gang stalkers in one day. So we could be talking about millions of people who are harassing me. And also many of you see it in the comment section, in the live chat. Often every single time that I go live, there's different gang stalkers in the live chat. And even if we just say that there's 20 to 30 gang stalkers per live chat, how many is that every week? Could be 150 gang stalkers a week in the live chat, 500 a month. So we're talking about on a very large scale for me. And that's how I'm very comfortable when people talk to me and when they're vulnerable about their experiences, what they've been going through. Because I get it, I've been going through it myself. And from my experiences, it tends to be high status people. People who are very successful. Maybe they're from an affluent family. They're very attractive. They've got a lot of potential in life. Some of them may not have much going on, but they just have a pure soul. They're just genuinely happy, carefree, easygoing people. That's another thing I've noticed as well. So what I've concluded is that it's something about the self-image. It either looks good, and people envy that, they want to have that wealth, power, and success. They wish that life was theirs, or it could be your happiness Even though you may not have any materialistic value, but you've just got that inner peace and happiness, and that's what they want. That's what they envy you for, in some cases. So that could be a part of the vendetta. And it may cause them to seek revenge or power, to control you, intimidate you. They may try to undermine your stability and sense of safety to dominate and manipulate them, to manipulate you. So, think about it like this, when they're destabilizing you, it's because you have some stability. Think about everything they're trying to do to you. How can they do this? How can they achieve it if you don't already possess it? So when they're sabotaging you, your career, your work life, is because you have that already. It's because you're already doing good in it. You're doing well. Same thing with your health. They're sabotaging your health because you already have good health. They're sabotaging your peace and happiness because you already have peace and happiness. They destabilize you because you're already stable. They try to ruin your reputation and destroy connections because you already have that. So you can see that they envy those things. You have things that they want, but they can't get it, so they destroy it. They take it away from you to relieve their feelings of not having that themselves. In some cases, there could be social or even political motivations. So some of you may be targeted for your political beliefs, activism, or social stance. And these gang stalkers may be organizations or groups that are trying to discredit or silence you through covert means. But what I would say is that that's very rare. Most of you aren't going to be targeted as a result of political motivations or by governments. Some gang stalkers, some targeted individuals, I think they do hold some kind of illusion of significance where they think that they're being targeted by governments. When really, governments, they've got so much bigger things going on. I don't think they're going to worry about one individual. Of course, in some cases they may, but in most situations, I would say that it's unlikely. So what I'm discussing here isn't anything political or to do with governments. But what you may experience in gang stalking is physical surveillance. You may feel that you are being followed or watched by people. And this could be in public spaces, it could be at your home, or even through online platforms. So it may seem like people are just involved in seemingly ordinary activities, when really you feel like under the radar, they're constantly observing you. And they may also, a bit of banging coming from the room above, they may also engage in psychological manipulation. They may use subtle psychological tactics to create confusion, stress, and anxiety. They may orchestrate coincidences, make odd or cryptic remarks to you, or they may manipulate other people in your environment to act strangely or suspiciously. Another common tactic is social isolation. They may isolate you by turning friends, family, or colleagues against you through the use of spreading rumors, using gaslighting techniques, or attempting to make you appear paranoid or unstable to other people. Which is kind of funny when you think about it, because we think of people in the world as though if someone is going through something, if someone seems paranoid or unstable, people will normally take them in and care about them, look after them. But actually, it seems to be the opposite, because when targeted individuals report being made to appear paranoid or unstable to people, it seems that people just turn against them. It doesn't cause anyone to care about them or want to protect them, which is an interesting thing to note, because we commonly misperceive that we're living in such a caring, loving world. Gang stalkers may also engage in technological manipulation, electronic harassment. So they may hack your phones, your computers, even your appliances. Or they may tamper with them to monitor them and to disrupt your life. So you may be bombarded with unwanted calls, emails, social media interactions. They may compromise your personal data. It's a huge crime, because data protection is a big thing these days with data protection laws. So they may compromise data protection, which is a very, very big crime, that is. But this is what they do. So, yes, of course, it's possible that many of these people may not actually be in one single cohesive organization. They may just be acting out of coercion, manipulation, or even their own ignorance. As an example, neighbors or acquaintances may contribute to the harassment by following these certain patterns or behaviors. It's kind of like monkey see, monkey do. But then other times there may be coordinated efforts. There are reports about this, and I've noticed it in my own experiences, is that many of them are coordinated, but they work together as a team. And there's nothing far-fetched about that. Even if we look at like ants, animals, they work together. Like hyenas, they work in packs to target their prey. So this could be the case with gang stalkers as well. And gang stalkers may even be working with law enforcement or even private investigators. Because as I've mentioned in past videos, police officers are often narcissistic as well, or even psychopathic, and this has been confirmed in many studies. So they coordinate these efforts through the use of information sharing, surveillance, and orchestrated actions to make you feel targeted. But this may be very difficult for you to prove, because it can be difficult for you to get that concrete evidence. Because of course they engage in covert actions. It's typically not out in the open. It's not something that can be directly observed by other people. So it can make it difficult for you to document or capture evidence that could stand up in a legal or investigative context. I myself, I have posted several events on my Instagram of gang stalking, and this was out in the open, and it was very overt, so you can see that on my Instagram. Just search for me, Narc Survivor YouTube. But typically they're not going to be so out in the open because they do know that what they're doing is wrong, it's criminal, and they don't want to be caught, they don't want to be exposed. Many of these people are involved in criminal gangs, and that's where they're covert, that's where they hide, because they don't want to get into trouble, they don't want to get caught out. Because perhaps if you catch them out, if you do gain evidence, maybe you could actually hold them accountable in a court of law. I'm not sure whether or not that is possible. I've heard from other people that they have done that. But it does depend on how high up this goes. Some of them, they act like they're untouchable, like they're above the law. And maybe that's because they do have connections in high places. Because we have to consider as well, I mean, many law enforcement governments are very corrupt in the world today as well. But yeah, what tends to happen is that when you share your experiences with other people, they don't seem to understand, they don't validate you. They could be gang stalkers as well, or maybe they just fail to understand you, which complicates it for you even more. And also the patterns of behavior that gang stalkers use are often very random. They change routes. They often like to use mimicking behaviors because they're envious. They like to copy you. Or they make incidental comments, which could easily just be brushed off as a coincidence. So all of this makes it difficult to identify a clear pattern of harassment. And of course, that's why they behave in that way, so that it's difficult to detect. So that it just looks like coincidences or inconveniences. Which is why you really got to keep detailed records. Try to protect your privacy as much as you can and seek legal support if it's available to you. And especially seek emotional support, therapy, support groups. I'm available for a one-on-one, which you can book on my website, narcsurvivor.co.uk. I've got years of experience in dealing with this. And I'm sure, as many of you may know, many of you who have been going through this, have done the research on it, there's potentially thousands of people every day around the world who are dying because of this. Maybe they're committing suicide or they're being killed in some sort of way. Their food may be poisoned. You know, there's so many different ways that they target you. So thousands of people around the world every day are potentially dying from gang stalking, having their careers ruined, their family broken apart, or maybe they end up in a mental hospital, maybe they're homeless on the streets. This happens to potentially thousands of people every day as a result of gang stalking. There aren't really any specific studies about it, but there are studies about, you know, people going homeless, mental institutions, committing suicide, or even mass shooters. There's plenty of reports about all of these, and I'm sure many of them are gang stalking induced. So, yeah, as I said, I've been going through this now every day for 8 years for the 24-hour day harassment and just general gang stalking. I've been going through that since 2011, which is almost 14 years. So at this point, it's pretty much most of my life. And despite that, as you can see, I'm relatively calm, I'm relatively relaxed. I mean, normally I'm more relaxed than this, but because I'm making a video, as you can hear, there's the radios and the horns, and there's a lot of chaos around me because I'm making a video. But then normally I'm just sitting down doing some work with my earphones in. So I'm more relaxed. I'm not normally this and more together, usually. Because I do take good care of myself and my mental health. As I look after my body, my skin, everything. Many people may not believe that I'm going to be 36 this month. That I'm always researching, studying. I have a lot of wisdom, experience, intelligence. I'm very good at articulating things. So I've taken very good care of myself, even though I haven't really had any support from anyone other than you guys, of course, when you're supporting my videos, donating, everything. That's helped me a lot along my journey. But everyone else outside of this has just been there to sabotage me. So I'm very thankful for all of you. And who knows what state I would begin if I didn't have you. If I didn't have your support, I'd probably still be stuck in the same apartment in the UK. I wouldn't have traveled anywhere. Who knows if I'd even be alive? Who knows what would have happened to me? The only reason why I'm still relatively okay, I still have my sanity. I'm not completely paralyzed. I'm able to speak and make a video. It's only because I've had the funding, because of your support. Without your support, I don't know what would have happened to me. Like, how would I eat, and how would I clothe myself? How would I take care of Nala? How would I be able to afford any products for my skin so that I can remain looking youthful and be a supportive influence to so many of you? Of course, it's not all about the looks, but it looks more professional, more credible to see someone who is grounded. And because unfortunately, many targeted individuals, when you watch their videos, they can seem quite unstable, paranoid, which can make them seem less credible. But for me, there has to be active, real-time gang stalking while I'm making a video in order to destabilize me, because otherwise I just switch straight back, and I'm grounded and I can express myself very clearly and easily. So it has to be active, real time in order to create an effect where it seems like I'm not completely stable. But then also the gang stalkers are quite delusional, and they see us differently from how we see ourselves. So they may be seeing something, they may be thinking that they're getting a result or a reaction that they want, but then everyone else who is seeing something different. As I know many of you are, because the gang stalkers, they like to make me think that I come across in an undesirable way in my videos. But I know most of you aren't having that experience. And also I'm not having that experience when I watch my videos back. It comes across as very clear, very polished to me. Got all the music going on outside, all the partying. But yeah, definitely seek emotional support. Support groups, book a one-on-one with me. I've got a ton of experience with gang stalking. I know all of their games, all of their mindsets, everything. I know why they do everything that they do. So book a one-on-one with me. I can help to clear the confusion. And we can even devise a plan, some strategies for you to maintain your mental and emotional health, because that's the most important thing about this, is to maintain that emotional stability, and also to not let it cause you to sink into depression, because this is what happens with so many targets, is that they do become depressed, they lose their job, they may become homeless, and they just give up on everything. But never give up. You've got to keep going. They want you to give up because they've given up. But you don't know what can happen, and things can improve for you. Things can get better. And you just got to be grateful for everyday activities. I know they bring you a lot of stress, a lot of trauma, but there's always things to be happy about, things to look forward to. I know they try and ruin everything. I mean, they'll try and poison your food and put drugs in the water, even just simple things you try and enjoy, they will ruin it. That's why this emotional support is so important. Because yeah, it can be extremely isolating and distressing. But you've got to remember, why you're being targeted. There is something very special about you. They are envious of you. Their envy of you does play a significant role in all of this. They will make it out like it's some personal wrongdoing by you. But that's the thing, if it's a personal wrongdoing, why can't they tell you what it is? They can't, because there is no personal wrongdoing. But if they were to tell you what it was, it would sound ridiculous, it wouldn't make any sense. And what they're doing would seem completely out of proportion to what's meant to have happened to them. It would seem far too extreme, and also their motivations wouldn't make any sense, because if there's something done wrong to them, why aren't they fixing or changing it? Why aren't they doing something about it to improve it, to make it better, rather than investing all their time and energy into targeting you? So this is probably why they don't reveal what their motivations are to you, because it's not going to add up, it's not going to make any sense. Because their motivation is their envy. They're envious of you. They're jealous. The root of all narcissistic behavior is envy. Professor Sam Vaknin has mentioned this. And also sadism. The desire to cause suffering and finding pleasure in another person's pain. The root of all of this is the sex drive. This is another thing that was confirmed by Professor Sam Vaknin. I know there's a lot of talking going on here. Hopefully it's not too loud and you can still hear me clearly. But this is how it is, whatever hotel or condominium I go to, doesn't matter if it's got 5 floors like in this place, or if in the other condominium it has 50 floors, everyone does gravitate outside my door. That's where the party is. Everyone wants to be around me and my energy. But yeah, the root of it is envy. The envy arises from a belief that you have advantages or a life that seems better in some way, which can trigger feelings of resentment. It triggers this desire for them to tear you down. So they feel compelled to undermine you, to bring you down to their perceived level, or to make you feel as though you were losing control over your life. So the gangstalking becomes a covert form of retaliation or sabotage, fueled by this desire to diminish you because they see you as better off. And I know this talking is getting a bit extreme out there. They just can't leave me alone today. So I'm going to put my earphones in. I can think a bit more clearly without all of the foot stamping and the talking. It's unbelievable, I know. I can think much better now. Because as many of you will know, they train you to listen to the footsteps and the talking and just apply significance to everything they do. So it's much better when I just tune it out with the earphones. So yeah, they're seeking dominance. They desire to feel a sense of power and control. And it's because they feel insignificant. So they want to weaken you. They want to isolate you, make you question your own sense of reality and stability. They want to diminish your confidence, your psychological resilience, so that they can then gain a sense of dominance, even if it's only fleetingly. It's never something that they can sustain on their own. They may also perceive you as a threat, a professional threat, a social threat. It could even just be a perceived threat to their own personal success or reputation. And you may not even know why you're seen as a threat. But it could just be that they're trying to defend their own position or sense of security. Sometimes it can be different values or beliefs. They may want to silence you for your political beliefs, religious stance, or social views. But even then, it's still envy. Because they believe that your values or beliefs challenge the status quo or established norms. So these people are holding grudges. They're seeking revenge. Because you may have unknowingly offended them or gotten involved in a dispute that has led to this covert harassment. The gangstalking can be a form of revenge or retribution, and the envy can be a byproduct of the conflict, especially if you have something that they desire, which typically many of you do have something that they desire. Because if you haven't got anything that they desire, then they're not going to waste their time. They're not really going to care so much. But often gangstalkers could be projecting their own insecurities onto you. They may be perceiving you as being better or luckier, and then this is what they use as justification for mistreating you. But it's interesting, because many of you may say yourself that you're not particularly special or better off in any way. You're not really that lucky. But it could be a misperception. They may just have perceived envy because they're mentally ill. So they may be envious of things that aren't even there. They could just be imagining it in their heads. It may seem ideal to them in their minds, and that's what they're trying to sabotage. Because you don't know how they're viewing you. They could view you as something ideal, as something up there. And then they want to take it down. They want to make it seem less than perfect. Because to them it is perfect. I mean, think about it. If it was just normal, if they saw it as normal, average, nothing special or unusual, you really think they'd go out of their way to sabotage you? They probably wouldn't. It's because in their delusional minds, in their fantasy, they're viewing you as something ideal, something larger than life. That's threatening them. It's making them feel inferior. But yeah, a big part of it that many of you may experience is that a lot of this does come down to class and status. So they may perceive you as socially or economically different. Someone who is more successful or has access to resources. This can fuel envy from those who feel disadvantaged. It may motivate them to attack or undermine your individual status as a way of leveling the playing field, because they feel beneath you socially and in terms of class and status. And you will notice this in their behavior because they will become very competitive. Because they're seeing it as though you're outperforming them, or that you're receiving attention or advancing in ways that they envy. So you're going to start to see their competitive behavior. And that will reveal to you if it is the case of class and status. They're going to show you what the problem is because they're going to project that onto you. They're going to try and make you feel insecure in that way because that's what's bothering them. It will give them a desire to control or humiliate you, where they will engage in power plays. Because they will feel this need to feel superior. And this could extend beyond financial or personal success. They will want to assert their dominance over you because they feel that you are more privileged, you are more fortunate. So now they desire to humiliate you or make you feel powerless, which is fueled by their envy and a thirst for control, which manifests as coordinated harassment, to where they may use subtle methods to manipulate you into doubting yourself, questioning your relationships, and feeling isolated. Because then they feel like they've asserted control over this person's life who they envy and to perceive as being privileged or fortunate. So envy is definitely a motivator of gangstalking, as well as personal vendettas and jealousy, a desire for power, control, revenge. But yeah, your success, your perceived difference, these things will inadvertently trigger their negative feelings as well. But you know, whatever the reason is, I mean, typically the root of it is going to be envy and jealousy. But it is never acceptable to harass, intimidate, or destabilize someone else's life. It is abuse, it is criminal behavior, and they should be held accountable for it. There is no excuse or justification for harmful behavior. And that's why you've got to recognize that, yes, you are dealing with criminals. You're dealing with mentally ill people. And you must take the steps to protect yourself emotionally and legally. Seek support from trusted individuals or professional resources. Now, some of you may have been dealing with gangstalking maybe for a short time so far, maybe just a few weeks, a few months. Some of you may have been dealing with this for years, and it may be on such a mass scale. So, yeah, they are engaging in perpetual power struggles. Because they have this desire for power and control, they constantly feel compelled to continue their actions indefinitely to maintain dominance over you. So once they begin harassing you, they can then become obsessed with this idea of breaking your will or causing you to suffer, which is what then leads to this prolonged engagement. Because when they get that feeling of being in control, it can become very addictive, which then leads to a cycle that lasts for years. That could even just take up the rest of their life, to where they just constantly focus on having this control over you because it's the only thing that makes them feel alive. And some of these gang stalkers, they can be very paranoid, especially after they've been harassing you. They could be worried about what if it comes back on them. So they may believe that you possess an ongoing threat to them after what they've done to you. This could be a real or an imagined threat. based on some perceived power imbalance, rivalry, or ideological conflict. So they may perceive a threat in your success, popularity, or different views. And that's why the harassment may continue as part of a long-term campaign to neutralize you. They may have a desire to break your spirit. They may be fixated on driving you to a breaking point, emotionally, mentally, or socially. And this could be a long-term goal that requires sustained effort. They may believe in their heads that by continuing their efforts, eventually, they gotta succeed in making you feel defeated or helpless. And this is what motivates them to continue over an extended period of time. And you may not see it, but this can result in exhaustion for them. They could just completely exhaust them over time by them trying to pin you down and exhaust you. But of course, also it can result in isolation and exhaustion for you. Because the longer the harassment continues, it just affects your emotional resources, which can create a sense of isolation. It can wear you down over time. And of course, this can justify the stalker's behavior because then they believe that their actions are working on you. And also they can start to see that you may be becoming unhinged, and because they lack self-awareness, they're not thinking about how their actions are affecting you. They're just looking at you and how you're reacting to them. So they may see it as though you're mentally unhinged and not thinking that they're the ones who cause you to be that way. Because many gang stalkers, they're asleep. They're not really living. They're not really alive. They're not really conscious, awake and aware. They're pushing your buttons, but they're not even realizing that they're doing it half the time. So they're just looking at you as though you're mentally unhinged. And that's so many of them, they seem so delusional. Because they are delusional. Not all of them, of course, but many of them are. Many of them who are narcissists are gaslighting themselves. It tends to be the ones who are more psychopathic. They're the ones who are more aware. They're the ones who know more that what they're doing to you. But either way, I mean, it seems like they're never satisfied. It's like no matter what they do to you, no matter how badly they affect you, no matter how much they bring you down, no matter what they get out of you, no matter how much they demand from you, they're never happy. They're never satisfied. I mean, yeah, sometimes they try and mask it, they pretend to be happy, but you can tell they're not really happy. You can tell they're miserable. Of course they are, because no happy person is going to behave that way. They're not going to target you. They're not going to destabilize you. They're going to want things to be better, not worse. So clearly they're not happy. They're not satisfied. And it's because many of them harbor unrealistic expectations of what their actions are going to achieve. They think in their minds that by harassing or intimidating you enough, eventually they're going to win or achieve some form of victory. But the reality is that these expectations are never fulfilled in a meaningful or lasting way. Because most of the time they don't get to break you down or get you to retaliate in the way that they want you to. So then they feel like they haven't achieved their goal, which then just leads to further frustration. And they become addicted to control. This act of controlling and manipulating you becomes an addictive psychological process. They constantly seek new ways to exert influence over you, driven by this belief that they can perfect their method of harassment. But then when the desired results don't materialize as they expected it to, because you don't break down or you don't react as they intended you to, then they don't achieve that satisfaction of control, which then keeps the cycle going. So they have deeply ingrained feelings of resentment and hatred. They feel wronged, or they feel envious, and this is what causes them to fixate on you. They believe that by harassing you long enough, eventually they're going to feel satisfied or vindicated. But the reality is, and I've been doing this now, researching about this for 7 years, every day. The sense of vengeance is never going to bring them closure. They're never going to be satisfied. There is no light at the end of the tunnel for them. There's never going to be this moment where they're like, yes, I've crushed you. I've got power over you. The result that I wanted, it took 10 years, 100 years, but I finally did it. I finally got it. It's never going to be like that for them. And instead, it's going to foster a sense of perpetual dissatisfaction. Because they're always going to have this feeling that you haven't been punished enough, or that you haven't truly been defeated. And this is why they often then bring in other people. They establish this collective involvement and validation. It involves multiple people. And it could be on a large scale sometimes, where they feed off each other's negative energy and validation, which perpetuates the behavior over time. And the more people who are involved in the harassment, the more difficult it then becomes for any one of these people to step back and question the morality or effectiveness of their actions. So it creates a real problem for them, because the more people they get involved in the harassment, how is any of them ever going to step out of that group and think, hold on a minute, this is immoral, this is inhumane, this is illegal, or at least this is ineffective, this isn't even working, it's not even getting us the result that we want? What are the odds that one of the people is going to step out of that group and say that? They're not. It's not going to happen. Collectively, they're going to have this mentality that encourages a sense of ongoing duty, even if their results are not satisfying. And all they're going to do is continue projecting their inner insecurities onto you. And that's why they will continue their harassment. Because they're projecting their own insecurities, fears, unresolved issues onto you. It really has nothing to do with you. It's all about what they're insecure about. It's what they fear. It's the issues that they haven't resolved within themselves. Because remember, they don't even know you. They don't spend any time with you. They don't have a relationship with you. Most of them probably never even sat down and had a conversation with you. It's all about themselves. It's all about their own fears, insecurities, and unresolved issues. And that's what they project onto you. That's what they harass you with. So, yeah, they're experiencing ongoing dissatisfaction, which stems from a deep-seated need to externalize their own pain and unhappiness onto you. And no amount of victimizing you is going to bring them inner peace. There are psychological dynamics behind long-term gangstalking. They derive a sense of identity and self-worth from their ability to manipulate you. Their sense of self is tied up in having control over you. And that's why they're unable to stop. Because this process is reinforcing their identity. So if they were to end the harassment, it would mean they would have to face their own vulnerabilities or personal failures, which of course they're going to resist at all costs. Because the whole point of this harassment campaign is to avoid accountability, is to avoid facing their own failures and vulnerabilities by projecting them onto you. And that's how they've then just derived this sense of identity and self-worth from their ability to manipulate you. To the point where they then normalize behavior, especially since this is in groups and they've been engaged in gangstalking for years. gradually this behavior becomes normalized. It may have started out as a few isolated incidents, but gradually it then grew into a group mentality where all of these individuals involved, they no longer even question the morality or the effectiveness of their actions. It's just become normal to them. They have become desensitized to the harm that they're causing. And yet the harassment continues as a result of the group dynamics. And it escalates power dynamics. It evolves into a power struggle that goes beyond the original motivations, which may have been very different initially. Of course, the longer it goes on, the more entrenched both the stalkers and you become. So these stalkers may feel like they can't back down now because they've already invested so much of their time and energy into the effort that for them to back down now, that will signal defeat. But it's very childlike mentality. They don't want to lose, they want to win. But the reality is that they're never going to be satisfied. They're only ever going to have an illusion of control. This feeling of control that they're seeking is an illusion. Because no amount of harassment is going to truly give them control over your life the way that they hope. Many of you are resilient. You show a refusal to break down. Or you have an ability to seek help, which frustrates the stalkers. It makes them feel like their actions have not led to the ultimate victory that they have envisioned in their minds, which leaves them to be unsatisfied and to where they feel the need to escalate their efforts. And that's why many of you are being gang-stalked over the months and years that go by. You see their efforts escalate. The behaviors become more extreme. It's because they're unsatisfied. It's because they're not getting that sense of control that they envisioned in their minds. That's why the behavior is escalating and becoming more extreme. And also they may have psychological dissonance. I mean, cognitive dissonance. Because they're constantly being confronted with the failure of their efforts and they just don't want to accept it. So they keep pushing it because they don't want to accept that it's just a reality of their failure. But they desire to have success. So yeah, it goes on for years because of their unrealistic expectations and the group dynamics. They feel this ongoing need to exert control, avenge perceived wrongs, and to maintain a sense of power over you. But they're just constantly dissatisfied because it's just an illusory nature of control. They fail to achieve the sense of victory or closure that they expect, which leads to continued efforts that are never fully fulfilling. So essentially, they are addicted and obsessed. 112 live viewers, if you find it helpful so far, give it a thumbs up. I'm giving it to you raw in this video. The truth that gang stalkers do not want you to know. They are addicted and obsessed. They have become victims of their own game. And it's because they have an addiction to control and power. They have developed an unhealthy fixation on you and the idea of control, to where they now have a psychological dependency on you, which may feel empowering, typically because they feel disempowered in other areas of their lives. That's why it feels empowering for them to have control over you and to manipulate you, which of course is very different from the reality that they typically present to you, because they make it look like they've got it all together in their lives. They make it seem as though they're very empowered in other areas of their lives. If that were true, they wouldn't have this psychological dependency on you. They wouldn't feel this need to manipulate and control you for a sense of empowerment. They do because they actually feel disempowered in other areas of their lives. And the longer that they harass you, the more they become attached to the idea of maintaining power over you. The sense of control becomes an addiction, but they're constantly seeking new ways to manipulate, harass, or observe you, even though they're not achieving the results that they expect. And yet, as time goes on, it escalates their obsession. Their need to exert control becomes increasingly all-consuming. They go to greater lengths. They spend more time and resources on orchestrating the harassment. And this obsession just feeds into their desire to win or achieve some form of dominance over you. But the more that they invest, the harder it becomes to stop, even if the actions no longer bring them satisfaction. They become like drug addicts. Initially, the drug may have given them a high, but then after that, the rest of the time, they're just kind of taking the drug to feel normal. They're just hoping that they're going to get that high again, but they never do. They never get that initial satisfaction that they got the first time. And it just locks them into this cycle of obsession with no clear goal. I mean, what would be the point in them not being covert and in them telling you why they're gang stalking you? Because there's no clear goal. There's no realistic end goal of why they're doing what they're doing. They may think that breaking you down psychologically or causing you to react in a certain way will bring them closure or satisfaction. But your resilience or your refusal to give in makes the harassment very difficult. So they never get to feel like they've succeeded. It just produces a lack of a tangible result, which drives them into a perpetual cycle where the stalking continues out of frustration, where you need to finish what they started, rather than just seeking satisfaction or feeling like they're winning. It's more they're just frustrated. So they just constantly chip away at you. They isolate you, they manipulate you, they mentally exhaust you. And this just becomes a way for them to validate their own sense of worth. They develop an obsession with you. You become a surrogate for their own deeper insecurities and feelings of powerlessness. But the irony is, the more obsessed they become with you, the more they lose control over their own lives. They become victims of their own game. They become psychologically entangled in their own harassment because they have this obsession with breaking you down, which causes them to ignore the personal toll it takes on them. Over time, they feel as though their lives are now centered on you, and this leads to unintended consequences where they themselves are trapped in a cycle of mental and emotional energy that no longer gives them the satisfaction they crave. Many gang stalkers experience burnout because their prolonged effort to harass you does not yield the desired outcome. Despite their continued investment of time and energy, they feel increasingly disillusioned because the result is never as fulfilling as they imagined in their minds. So they begin to question their own motives, especially if you remain unaffected or if you grow stronger in the face of harassment. And many of them experience emotional and social damage. It takes a toll on them, especially if they're engaged in a coordinated effort. If they're a part of a group, then they start to internalize the negative emotions of the collective, which further fuels their own obsession. It may even alienate them from their own social networks because the constant focus of the target disrupts their relationships with friends, family, co-workers. It may cause them to become isolated as well. It may cause them to become victims of their own behavior. there are long-term consequences, and that's why the gang stalking goes on for such a long period of time. It's a long-term consequence of their own initial behavior. That's why they can't let go, because their life is now consumed by an obsession. The gang stalking goes on for years because they have become so consumed by the obsession that they don't know how to stop. Their identities have become so closely tied to the role they've assumed in the scheme of harassment. And the stalking behavior has become so ingrained that it's now very difficult for them to extricate themselves from it without them having to confront their deep-seated psychological issues. And because they've pushed forward with their efforts for such a long time, many of them may be experiencing feelings of paranoia and self-doubt. They may be obsessed with the idea that they're being watched or judged, which can cause them to feel isolated or insecure. It causes them to become victims of their own game, where they then end up questioning the effectiveness of their harassment, while they're simultaneously becoming even more entrenched in the need to continue. Because many of them just become addicted to the drama. They're very toxic, dysfunctional people. They love drama. They enjoy the act of harassing or watching someone being distressed. This provides them with a sense of exhilaration or excitement. The emotional drama is a form of entertainment or emotional gratification for them, which makes it harder for them to stop. Their addiction to drama is what keeps them trapped in the cycle, because they feel like they're winning by continuing the game. They don't feel like they're winning by stopping, because they've never actually won. It's a competition that they can never win. They experience validation through control. They get an emotional payoff through this illusion of control. But no matter how much they escalate the harassment, if you don't break or submit, then their need for validation goes unmet, which then creates a paradox where they keep escalating the behavior, hoping that eventually they're going to achieve a sense of success or victory, but it never truly satisfies them, which creates a cycle of perpetual dissatisfaction. It causes them to be trapped in this cycle where they're addicted to the power and control that their actions provide, to where they then become victims of their own game. Because they have this obsession with you, which is combined with their inability to achieve the satisfaction that they crave, which locks them into a destructive cycle, where they keep pushing forward, thinking that if they just continue, they'll finally achieve what they want. But actually, their actions cause more harm to themselves than the target. They're getting themselves all worked up. They're getting their panties in a twist, trying to affect you. They don't even see the harm they're causing to everyone else and to themselves. And that's just it. You know, I've done the research, I've explored the studies, and I can tell you, bullies are at a 10 to 25 times more risk of developing a psychiatric condition than their own victims who they are bullying or intimidating. It affects them in so many different ways, and I've done a video that really explores this, and it's backed by real studies, real data. And that is the smear campaign will destroy the narcissist and their fly monkeys. It's a video I did about 1 year ago, so definitely check that one out here on my channel here as well. But yeah, in the end, they end up in a position where they are psychologically consumed by their own pursuit, suffering from burnout, emotional turmoil, a sense of deep dissatisfaction, where they become victims of their own destructive obsession. And this is why many of you may notice a pattern when you're dealing with them, is that you may remember at the beginning where they were initially targeting you, gangstalking you, they seemed very excited, thrilled about it. But then gradually, as time goes on, as the months and years go by, it's very rare that you actually see them happy, that you actually see them excited about it. They just seem really miserable. They don't seem happy about it at all, even while they're still continuing to harass you. But then you may find that you've discovered your own inner peace because you've been isolated from people. You've been shut out of the world, the matrix. You've had to go within and find your own peace and stability. So you as the target, you become stronger. They become weaker. They become unhappier because they're hooked on a drug. Well, as for you, you don't get to enjoy the drugs of the world. You've been isolated and cut out from all of that. So it causes you to become like a Buddhist monk. It causes you to find peace and enlightenment within yourself, where they remain attached to the world and they never find true happiness. But yeah, this is all because initially they wanted your happiness and peace. They wanted to feel as good as you did. They envied your innocence and freedom. They may not consciously realize it, but yeah, they were motivated by a desire for your happiness, peace and freedom. They longed for what they lack. They're deeply envious of your happiness and peace. Because you may be someone who appears to have emotional stability, success or freedom, which are qualities that they lack. And maybe they're unable to directly take these things from you. So then instead they have this subconscious desire to disrupt your peace because they feel like they are missing that themselves in their lives. They experience restlessness and dissatisfaction. They struggle with their own inner turmoil. They feel unfulfilled and emotionally disconnected. And they view your apparent peace of mind or contentment as something that is unattainable, something that they're never going to achieve. And this sense of dissatisfaction is what drives them to act out against you, believing that if they can diminish your peace and happiness, then that will then somehow fill the void in their own life. Because they don't believe that they can ever attain that peace and happiness for themselves in their own lives. That's why they seek to destroy yours. Because trust me, I mean, if they really thought that they could invest time and energy into their own lives and achieve peace and happiness, they'd probably be doing that instead of worrying about you. They envy your innocence and freedom. You were chosen as a target because you embody innocence, kindness, and goodness, which is a source of intense envy. For someone who may have faced hardship, betrayal, or disillusionment, your purity and emotional freedom stands in stark contrast to their own inner struggles. The gangstalkers feel like your innocence is something they can never attain, which leads to them resenting you and desiring to undermine it. You may also have freedom, whether it's emotional, financial, or social. All of this is threatening to the gangstalkers because you have the ability to live without constant fear or stress, while they feel trapped in their own lives. They're constantly weighed down by negative emotions, responsibilities, or situations. So your freedom, whether it's actual or perceived, becomes an object that they desire. They wish they could feel free like you do. And that's why they feel that your sense of peace and freedom is something that they need to take away. They may also be projecting their own lack, their own deficiency. their own feelings of inadequacy or emotional burden onto you. They may feel like you don't deserve to have the happiness or peace that you have, because they feel trapped in their own lives. So their actions may be driven by a belief that you are living a life that is unearned or unjust in some way, which reinforces their desire to bring you down to their level. They seek to diminish you because it's their way of trying to feel better about themselves, because they feel powerless and insignificant. So they may just feel validated by controlling or influencing your emotional state. Because your peace and emotional stability is a symbol of what gang stalkers feel like they can never attain, which leads them to try and shake your sense of security so that they can then feel validated in their own lives. They have a desire to compensate for their own personal pain. They believe that if they can make you feel as bad or as insecure as they do, then somehow this will equalize the emotional imbalance that they experience. So it may not always be so much about harming you, more than it is about their own unresolved inner conflict. But either way, it's an illusion of satisfaction. It's temporary gratification, to where they really just experience frustration and a lack of closure. It deepens their envy and frustration. They will never feel complete or satisfied. And it's because they're not addressing the real root of their dissatisfaction. They're not addressing their own emotional and psychological struggles. And this is why they can't let go, because they have an addiction to disruption. They have an ongoing obsession with disrupting your life. And this can often stem from an addiction to the disruption itself. They may never understand why they can't let go. But the fact is that they are driven by a need to continue to affect you emotionally. They have this unfulfilled desire to feel better about their own lives through taking you down. And that's what keeps them going. But it really just perpetuates a cycle of envy. Because as long as they feel like you embody something they cannot have, whether it is your happiness, peace, innocence, or freedom, they will continue to try and destroy it. So this cycle of envy becomes self-sustaining. And their focus on you is no longer just about your life, but it becomes more about their own unresolved emotional needs. They really just desire to feel as good as you do. They envy your emotional state, peace, and freedom. They long to feel as good as you feel, or to experience the happiness and sense of stability that they perceive in your life. They have an obsession with you because they believe that you have something that they cannot ever obtain or deserve. And that's why instead of seeking to improve their own emotional well-being, they try to take away or disrupt your peace, thinking that by doing that, somehow they're going to achieve satisfaction or fulfillment. But actually in the process, they just end up trapped in a cycle of envy, obsession, and emotional frustration, ultimately becoming a victim of their own action and desire. So again, the harassment is less about you, and it's really just more about their own unresolved emotional needs. They may think in their minds that they're attacking you as the source of their dissatisfaction, when actually what they're truly confronting is their own inability to find peace, happiness, or fulfillment. And this is what causes their actions to feel endless and ultimately unfulfilling. Because true satisfaction only comes from addressing our own inner conflicts and embracing the possibility of healing. So essentially, they are just miserable, depressed, envious people. And the longer they harass you, the more extreme their behaviors will come with time. And it reflects that they are continuing to deteriorate mentally. Their escalating actions and prolonged harassment are a reflection of their own emotional and mental deterioration. They are experiencing emotional and mental decline. And this is why initially the actions start small or more covert. But then as the harassment continues and they see little to no effect on you, their frustration grows, which causes them to become increasingly aggressive or extreme in their methods. All the while their mental health is deteriorating. It's eroding their mental and emotional stability to where they may experience heightened stress, anxiety, and even paranoia, which can manifest in irrational behavior as they become fixated on the idea of breaking you, even though the initial motivations behind the harassment may be rooted in envy or a desire for validation. But yeah, as they continue with this obsession, they will experience cognitive disruption. It will disrupt their ability to think clearly and rationally, because their constant focus on you and the need to track and manipulate your movements and the escalating tactics, all of this contribute to a mental state that is more disordered than when the harassment first began. But over time, they may see their own behavior as justified, even when they escalate it to extreme levels. And this self-justification leads to cognitive dissonance, where their actions no longer align with their original sense of right and wrong. And over time, they just experience even more envy, frustration, and exhaustion. Many of them experience burnout. They exhaust themselves emotionally, mentally, and even physically because of this obsession with monitoring, manipulating, and disturbing you, which is very draining. They get caught in a trap of trying to control the uncontrollable. And they just can't find any lasting peace or satisfaction from their actions. But they've invested so much into the harassment that they can't stop, even if they wanted to. Because now it's become a key part of their identity. So they're stuck in a cycle of deterioration. And actually, when you see them escalate their behaviors, when it becomes more extreme, it's a cry for help. Their escalating behavior reflects an internal breakdown. They're pushing harder against you because they don't know how else to cope with the feelings of emptiness, isolation, and inadequacy that are consuming them. So their actions, no matter how harmful it may be, it's a misguided attempt to feel validated and powerful. And the longer they go, the less likely they are to achieve the results that they desire. It just leads to even greater mental deterioration as they become more and more fixated on their failed pursuit. They develop an obsession with you which has become so consuming that they are unable to escape it. Which is why you may begin to see that they are beginning to self-destruct. Their relationships with friends, family, and co-workers may begin to fall apart due to their erratic behavior or their obsessive focus on you. Many of them may even just isolate themselves or alienate other people as this harassment continues. And this social and emotional isolation deepens their mental health struggles. It leads to even more severe forms of depression, anxiety, and even paranoia, to where they may experience psychological withdrawal. So gradually, they fall into this obsession. And they may even experience psychological withdrawal symptoms when they are not around you, when they are not harassing you. They may start to see you everywhere. Or they may even interpret ordinary events. Some of you, if you pay close attention, you may have noticed this. Many gang stalkers, they experience ordinary events outside of the campaign as being connected to their harassment efforts. And this could be something that they perceive as someone else is orchestrating, someone else who is aware of it. But yeah, it gets to that point where they do interpret ordinary events. They become so paranoid, they interpret ordinary things as being connected to their efforts of harassment, because they become so deeply entrenched in it. And this kind of delusional thinking really just reflects the deterioration in their cognitive abilities and their emotional health. And their inability to accept that you're unaffected just deepens their frustration. It leads to a spiral of increasing extremity in their actions. To I guess they will experience emotional fatigue and exhaustion, chronic anger and resentment, an inability to let go. Because the more they invest into the harassment, the harder it is for them to stop. For them to let go, it would mean confronting the reality of their own dysfunction, something they are unwilling or unable to do, because they get an emotional payoff, or at least they imagine that they will, from breaking you down, and that becomes more important to them than any other aspect of their life. And that's what leads to this continued focus on you, even at the expense of their own mental well-being, to where they end up trapped in a vicious cycle. They experience continued deterioration. A gang stalker's journey is one of continued mental deterioration, because as the harassment goes on, their mental health degrades further and further as their actions become more extreme and erratic. When you see their actions becoming more extreme and erratic, that should signal to you that their mental health is degrading. They're getting worse. And their initial motivation of envy, anger, or insecurity, this is now whole fused with an addiction to control you. And over time, this obsession with you becomes less about you. And now it's more about their own inability to stop the cycle. That's what it's become more about now. Because they become a prisoner of their own mindset. They become a prisoner of their own envy, frustration, and the need to control you. And your strength, resilience, and emotional freedom only serve to deepen their frustration. It reinforces this belief that you must be brought down in order for them to feel relief. And yet this relief is always temporary. And so the cycle continues, which then further deteriorates their mental health. And then it leads them to seek more relief, which is temporary. The cycle continues. It just goes on, and it never ends. So, their mental deterioration is symptomatic of their deeper struggles. It starts off with feelings of envy, insecurity, or frustration, but it deepens with time as they try to manipulate or control you. So their focus on you becomes more obsessive, extreme, and irrational, which reflects the mental toll that they're undergoing. Their actions are symptomatic of their deep emotional issues, including depression, anxiety, and unresolved personal pain. Their need to harm or disrupt you and your peace mirrors their own inability to find peace or fulfillment in their own lives. So, although yes, this vicious cycle of frustration and obsession may harm you, but it leads to their mental and emotional deterioration as well. It makes them victims of their own destructive patterns, and as I've mentioned previously in this video, referring to studies, clinical studies, bullies are at a 10 to 25 times more risk of developing a psychiatric condition than their own victims who they are bullying or intimidating. And this is why you see their behaviors escalate and become more extreme. Well, you may just find peace and stability within yourself because it's destroying them far more than it's ever affecting you. It's doing a number on them far more, and that's how they end up becoming so much worse with time. But also, I mean, let's touch on how delusional they are, because, thinking that they're in control, they're superior. I mean, they need all of these people just against you, one person. This reveals their inadequacy because they can't even target you one-on-one. They can't even target you one-on-one unfairly, let alone having a fair and equal contest. I mean, even if they had a fair and equal contest, you against all of them. You're greater than all of them put together, and they know that. That's why they need all of them together. Because the very nature of their gangstalking reveals deep delusions, a profound sense of inadequacy within all of the stalkers. This is why they need multiple people to target a single individual. They're compensating for their internal weaknesses and fears. They hold a delusion of collective power, an illusion of control, because they feel weak and disempowered alone. This is why they need multiple people to conspire against just you to create an illusion of strength and control. But in reality, this collective effort is actually a sign that they lack confidence in their own ability to take you on individually. Because why can't they confront you one-on-one? They can't, because they lack the emotional, psychological, or even moral strength to engage in a fair contest. And yet they hold this delusional thinking. They have this need to enlist other people into their mission, which reflects the delusion that you are somehow inherently weaker or more vulnerable because you're alone. Because in their delusional minds, they believe that overwhelming you with numbers can subdue or break you. Even though this strategy is actually ultimately rooted in their fear and insecurity. They're deluded in the thinking that you need to be taken down by force because they perceive you as a threat to their own sense of worth or superiority. Your strength makes them feel inferior. One of the core reasons why gangstalkers feel the need to gang up on an individual is because the target is stronger, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually, than the stalkers. Because the thing about it like this, I mean, the fact that one person, one individual can endure or rise above the constant harassment while the stalkers continue to feel miserable and inadequate exposes their own vulnerabilities. And this is why, of course, your resilience, peace, and emotional strength, it's a mirror of all of these stalkers' deep insecurities and self-doubt. They all collectively feel overwhelmed by your power because your strength is a constant reminder of their own inadequacies. But of course, because they're delusional, rather than facing this truth, they will attempt to target your emotional stability and peace. But by doing that, they're just exposing their own weaknesses. Because someone who is genuinely powerful does not need to rely on another person to destroy or undermine people. So, this collective efforts of targeting you, harassing you, it reveals that you are greater than the sum of the stalkers. Doesn't matter how many of them there are. Even if it's on a grand scale, even if you're dealing with 1 million stalkers, you're greater than all of them put together. Because despite their numbers, they're still struggling with their own unresolved issues. But you're finding peace and stability within yourself. So you are greater than all of them put together. And, this is how it is. If you look at the prophets or gods, and as you see in the Bible, I do recall Noah's Ark. I believe Noah lived for, think it was 600, 700 years. And God wiped out all of the people. And the floods, this happened multiple times in the Bible. God just wiped them out because the target was stronger than all of them put together. God saw it as better just to get rid of them all and just keep the target. Because clearly that was the one who had the strength. That's why they were being targeted, just one person by such a large number of people. So yeah, I mean, this is why there's a lack of fairness for a reason. This is why they have an inability to engage as equals. This is why they're unwilling to engage fairly. This is why they have a need to manipulate, control, and overpower you. Because it all just reflects their inability to fight a fair or honest battle. And yet they're deluded by thinking that by banding together, they can tip the scales in their favor. This strategy just highlights their fear and inability to win on their own merits. It reveals that they have a fear of losing. Clearly, they're terrified of facing you one-on-one in an honest encounter because they know they're going to lose. That's why they need so many of them. Because they know that your inner strength, your ability to remain calm, resilient, and unaffected cannot be matched by their petty tactics and manipulation. They believe that by overwhelming you with numbers, they stand a better chance of winning. But this reveals that the real battle isn't between the gangstalkers and you as the target. This is a battle between the gangstalkers themselves, between their insecurities and their need to prove superiority over you. All of them collectively have an inability to confront their own issues. They have unresolved inner conflict. This is why they have a delusional need for group power. It's a reflection of their own inability to face their personal issues. Rather than dealing with their own insecurities, envy, or emotional trauma, they externalize these feelings and project them onto you. They believe that somehow you are responsible for their negative emotions, when in reality, you represent something that they lack: inner peace, confidence, and emotional freedom. So they're simply projecting an inadequacy by them attempting to break you. They're just projecting their own feelings of failure and powerlessness onto you. They're imposing their beliefs onto you in a desperate attempt to feel better about themselves. This projection is just a mask for their own inadequacy. And it just further isolates them from the possibility of emotional growth or resolution. The collective effort highlights their own fear. The fact that one person, one target can withstand the collective effort of multiple stalkers. I mean, even if it's just 5 stalkers, let alone if it's 500, 5,000 stalkers, it speaks volumes about the power of your character. Your ability to endure and remain unaffected by the harassment exposes all of these stalkers' weaknesses, because they cannot overpower someone who is strong in their own right. And of course, this then amplifies their fear of their own inadequacies and causes them to double down on their efforts. Even though, yes, they are fighting an unwinnable battle because they just throw even more people into it. They increase the numbers, and it just makes them all look like even bigger losers together. And actually, they would look much better with you. If one of the stalkers left the group and sided with you, they would look much better. And that would demonstrate real strength, real courage, real confidence, real power. They all look like idiots, fools. They look ineffective together because it's a large group of them targeting you, one person. And it just reveals that despite their combined efforts, they cannot succeed in their goal of breaking you. And clearly, the fact that they need group participation, it shows how little power they truly have individually. They're all just clinging to each other in an attempt to cover up their own weaknesses. Their reliance on others, it signals that they don't have the confidence or strength to face you alone, which just proves how much stronger you are than them, both individually and emotionally. You are greater than the sum of the stalkers. Doesn't matter how many they throw into the mix. Doesn't matter if it's 5 stalkers, 500 stalkers, 1,000,000 stalkers. It doesn't matter how many there are. You're greater than all of them put together. Because it is the power of one versus many. And this is a testament to your strength as a target. When you're being faced with a large group of people, and especially when you remain unbroken, it just makes their actions feel increasingly pathetic. Because just think about it, they're so insecure that they've got to mobilize a group of people to tear down one person. But your inner peace and strength stands in stark contrast to the collective weakness of the gang stalkers, which does prove that true power does not come from numbers or aggression. It comes from resilience and self-confidence. So whichever way they try to pull it, however they try to pull a rabbit out of their hat or whatever trick they're trying to do, the victory lies with you. The fact that you remain unaffected or you grow stronger, it proves that you are greater than all of the stalkers combined. Your strength and ability to endure serves as a direct reflection of all of the gang stalkers combined, their inadequacy, which should be a source of empowerment for you. It means that you have won the battle. And not only have you won the battle, you won the battle without confrontation or violence, but with the quiet power of your own inner strength by holding on to your morals. Something that not one of the gang stalkers was able to do. I mean, you've won, you've beaten them in so many ways, so many different ways. I mean, I could write a list of all of the different ways that you are victorious over them. It's unbelievable. You have destroyed them, annihilated them, their team, and you're just one individual. You're greater than all of them. Because they need multiple people to target one person, which reveals how inadequate they feel on their own. It reveals that their collective efforts are a delusional attempt to compensate for their own weaknesses, their own fear, insecurity, and envy. Because they all have to band together to break you down. This exposes the fact that they cannot win in a fair or honest contest because they're driven by their own inadequacies. They're unable to stand alone or to face you on their own terms. So yeah, let your resilience, peace, and strength serve as a constant reminder of what the stalkers lack. And this will only just fuel their obsession even more. But in the end, your greatest strength is rooted in your emotional and mental peace, and that is the true power. And that power is far greater than any group of people working in tandem to take you down. Thank you for the donation. Hit our Paso, I appreciate it. But yeah, coming to the end of the video, and you know, it is better to be the target than to be in a group of degenerate gang stalkers, because it places you in a stronger, more empowered position than individuals who are just part of a gang stalking group. It highlights the strength of the individual, your inner strength, your ability to maintain your peace and resilience in the face of harassment. This speaks volumes about your inner strength. While gang stalkers rely on external forces, numbers, manipulation, fear to achieve their goals. They're weakened by their need to act in a group and their inability to face you directly. While you as the individual target, you have self-determination. You have your own autonomy, your own separate identity as an individual, rather than groupthink hive mind. They're caught in a cycle of desperation and emotional turmoil. Well, you have this own individual separate freedom on how you're going to decide to rise above their actions. So you hold the higher ground. And any attempts that they make to try and bring you down, this only underscores your personal strength. Well, the gang stalkers, collectively, they will mentally deteriorate. As I discussed earlier, engaging in this obsessive behavior, it just causes their delusions, frustration, and fear to deepen over time, until they will find themselves isolated, emotionally drained, and trapped in a cycle of obsession. While you will preserve your peace and find ways to heal, but they will not be able to escape the negative emotions that they have generated. They will experience a lack of fulfillment. They will never experience true satisfaction from their actions. Their envy and manipulation, it might give them brief moments of power, but it's fleeting, and it will leave them feeling empty. But you as the target, you have the opportunity to find meaning in your experiences, gain emotional resilience, and to even grow stronger from the adversity. And on top of that, you have the moral high ground as well. You are standing on the right side. You are the target, which means that you are the one who is ultimately in the right. You are not participating in harmful or destructive actions. You're just trying to live your life and maintain your dignity. These gang stalkers are participating in immoral and criminal behavior. They are misguided. They are driven by envy, and they are unable to see the harm that they are causing. They lack integrity and self-respect. Their actions erode their self-respect and moral integrity over time, because they've chosen to harm you out of their own personal weakness, and then now they're going to have to live with the consequences of their behavior. While your integrity remains intact, you maintain your self-respect because you don't stoop down to their level. Instead, you hold your head high, knowing that you are not a part of their cycle of negativity and destruction. Empathy and compassion wins every time. It wins over hatred and resentment. You have your emotional balance and your emotional freedom. They're trapped in their own negative emotions, while you are free to experience peace, growth, and healing. You have the opportunity to move beyond their cruelty and find fulfillment in healthier ways. So get us as the targeted individuals, we are the winners in the long run. We experience personal growth and empowerment. They experience long-term decline. And that is ultimately just the power of compassion and forgiveness, healing and a peace. The target holds the real power. It's much better to be the target than to be one of the gang stalkers. Yes, our journey may be painful, but it is one of self-discovery, healing, and empowerment. Gang stalkers are on a path of self-destruction, a spiral of delusion, obsession, and emotional decay. While you have the moral high ground, you have the potential for personal growth. You have the inner strength to withstand and even transcend the cruelty of other people. While they're prisoners of their own weaknesses, they're trapped in a cycle of destructive behavior, which ultimately leaves them unfulfilled and empty. You are the one who holds the power. You are the one who has the ability to remain calm, compassionate, and strong in the face of adversity, while they are left to suffer the consequences of their poor choices. And I guess this is why, think about it, throughout history, it was always the prophets of God who were the targets. Prophets, visionaries, leaders who stood for truth, justice, positive change. They were always the target of persecution, harassment, and undue opposition. Just like what we see today, modern day gang stalking. We become the focus of collective resentment and attacks because we embody ideals that challenge the status quo or expose uncomfortable truths. And they envy our divine message because we are social change leaders. Just like Martin Luther King, John Lennon, Malcolm X, Gandhi, and so many others who fought for civil rights, peace, equality. They all became targets of societal forces that felt threatened by their vision of a better world. And this opposition is fueled by fear. But despite that, we have the power of our message. Because we will endure, we will continue to inspire positive change. Gangstalkers, they're going to go unnoticed in history. Even if they are remembered, it will only be by their destructive behavior. Because their hatred, which is fueled by their own envy and insecurities, will never lead to any constructive social progress. It leads to destruction. It doesn't build anything. So there's a clear difference between us as targets and gangstalkers. We are principled and purposeful. They are hateful and obsessed. They have a lack of purpose. They act out of envy, resentment, and a sense of inferiority, which makes their actions unfocused and meaningless. They have no greater vision beyond their own toxic emotions. So they leave nothing of value behind in the world. But as for us, the targets of gangstalking, we're just like the visionaries throughout history. We leave a legacy. We continue to inspire people long after our trials. We stand against oppression. We stand for a higher truth. We are enduring legacies, such as individuals like Jesus, Gandhi, Lennon, and so many others. So many others who have outlived the people who tried to silence them. People who are still remembered to this day. But no one remembers the people who tried to silence them. Our messages of hope, peace, and love will continue to inspire generations. While these gangstalkers and their actions that are driven by anger and fear will be quickly forgotten, or they will be condemned for their destructive tendencies. Because we will find strength through adversity. The truth and the greater purpose will always outshine the darkness of hatred and envy. We will endure and we will leave a lasting mark on the world, while those who seek to destroy, will fade into obscurity. They will not have accomplished anything of value. Let me just take a sip of water. So for us as targeted individuals, this is the power of standing for something greater. We have something far more significant than the gangstalkers ever will. Values, vision, a belief in a better world, a purpose that transcends the trivialities of their hatred and envy. People who stand for something more meaningful will always attract resistance. But guess what? Our legacy will always rise above the noise. Just as history continues to honor the great leaders and visionaries who endured their trials and inspired future generations. But as for these gangstalkers, this gangstalker behavior on a mass scale, it just reflects, as a collective, their deficiencies in childhood, their unresolved trauma, their unfulfilled emotional needs. Well, maybe they experienced emotional neglect or abuse, and this is why they now engage in destructive behavior, because they were rejected in childhood. They have a lack of healthy emotional attachment. Their emotional needs were not met, so now they have a desire for control and power, which results in this collective behavior, where they enable dysfunction. They engage in groupthink and conformity. even if it's toxic or harmful. Because the gang stalking provides a way for them to feel like they're part of something larger than themselves. When really it's destructive and unhealthy. Because they're just avoiding healing. They're not going to confront their pain or seek healing. Instead, they're just going to project their own self-hatred onto you. And that's why you see the constant attacks, manipulation, and degradation. It's just a reflection of their own inner conflict. And it reveals their own self-loathing that they cannot face directly. They focus on hurting you to avoid confronting their own deeper issues that they have within themselves. And it results in this cycle of trauma and destruction, intergenerational patterns, a cycle of envy and self-destruction. Because yes, the root cause of gang stalking on a psychological level, it lies in deep-seated emotional wounds that began in childhood. Unmet emotional needs, trauma, insecurity, toxic coping mechanisms have now created these individuals, these gang stalkers, who instead of confronting their issues, project them onto you. And of course, when it's amplified by group dynamics, it becomes even more destructive. But their actions reflect the depth of their own unresolved pain. Their obsession with trying to destroy you is a manifestation of their own internal conflict. And you remain the object of their envy and frustration. While you embody the happiness and peace that they have never been able to find within themselves. So it's likely that they're never going to heal, they're never going to get better. I mean, how could they heal? After all of the things that they have done, would you give them another chance? Would you take them back? I'm sure many of you would not. After the things that they have done, I mean, they've been on such a vicious cycle for such a long time. It's inexcusable, it's unacceptable. They couldn't even compensate for the wrongs that they have committed. So they're forced to continue on this path of self-destruction. But as for us, we will continue to inspire change. We will continue on the right path of being more realistic and having values. But yeah, these are the truths that they don't want you to know. This is what you need to know about the gang stalking. And I'm very sorry for those of you who are going through this. But we will support each other together. And like the gang stalkers, we are our own individuals. We have our own identity. We don't band together collectively as a group. We don't have this hive mind. We have a separation, and we don't band together over attacking or harassing people. It's about supporting each other in the right direction. It's about healing and growth for us. Very different to them. But yeah, together we will continue to support each other. And I will continue to lead you all towards healing and growth. Because that is what I aspire for myself. And it's what I hope to motivate and inspire in you as well. So yeah, gang stalking. The truth that they don't want you to know. I hope you found this video helpful. Give it a thumbs up down below if you did. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Then you will be notified when I upload new videos or go live in the future. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I read your comments every day. If you would like guidance or support on your healing journey or to deal with gangstalking, you can book a one-on-one coaching session with me. Just go to my website, it is narcsurvivor.co.uk. Donations are greatly appreciated, no matter how small. You can donate to my PayPal, it is paypal.me/narcsurvivor. I'm also available on Instagram, you can follow me. It is Narc Survivor YouTube. Thank you all for joining me on a gangstalking live video. Everyone stay safe out there, protect yourself. And check out my other videos as well for some more support or book a one-on-one with me. Stay safe and I will talk to you soon.